Abigail says he's dying, Dutch. We'll have to stop someplace.
Okay, Arthur's out looking. I sent him up ahead.
If we don't stop soon, we'll all be dying. This weather, it's May. I'm just hoping the law got as lost as we did.
There! Arthur! Any luck?
I found a place where we can get some shelter. Let Davy rest while he... You know. An old mining town. Abandoned. It ain't far. Come on. Come on! Yeah!
Bring him in here!
Miss Gaskell, get that fire lit, quick. Miss Jones, bring in whatever blankets we have. Mr. Pearson, see what we've got in terms of food.
Davy's dead.
There was nothing more you could have done.
What are we gonna do? We need supplies.
Well, first of all, you're gonna stay here, and you were gonna get yourself warm. Now, I sent John and Micah scouting out ahead. Arthur and I, we're gonna ride out, see if we can find one of them. And this, just for a short bit. And I don't see what other choice we have. Listen. Listen to me, all of you, for a moment. Now, we've had, well, a bad couple of days. I loved Davy, Jenny, Sean, Mac. They may be okay. We don't know. But we lost some folks. Now, if I could throw myself in the ground, in their stead, I'd do it, gladly. But we are gonna ride out, and we are gonna find some food. Everybody, we're safe now. There ain't nobody following us through a storm like this one. And by the time they get here, well, we're gonna be long gone. We've been through worse than this before. Mr. Pearson, Miss Grimshaw, I need you to turn this place into a camp. We may be here for a few days. Now, all of you, get yourselves warm. Stay strong. Stay with me. We ain't done yet. Come on, Arthur.
All right. We've got some work to do.
We ain't run into them yet, so they both must have headed down the hill.
Sure. Hey, I ain't had time to ask. What really went down back there on that boat?
We missed you. That's what happened. Come on. Oh.
Hey, you need horses?
Oh, yeah. Hey, Mr. Smith, get yourself indoors. You need to rest that hand.
I'll live.
Get indoors, son. We need you strong.
Okay.
All right, let's head out.
Ain't sure what we're gonna find out here, Dutch.
We have to try. Stay close. We'll do our best to stick to the trail.
This goddamn weather!
In 2 days or more like this now, oh, it has wants to blow over soon. Careful over this bridge here.
Can't believe we lost Davy, too.
He's the last one, Arthur. No more. We need to get those people warm and fed.
At least we don't need to worry about Pinkertons tailing us in this.
A couple more days, we'll be on the other side. You need to help me pick the others back up. You're the only one I can rely on to stay strong right now.
We got fire and shelter. That's a start. And what about the money? Please tell me you at least got the money before it all went to hell on that boat.
We did. It's stashed with the rest of the money in town. It'll be safe for now, but we sure can't go back there to collect it anytime soon. Wait, is that someone coming towards us? You up ahead. Who's there? Micah.
Gentlemen,
Found anything?
I think so. Found a little homestead down that way.
Okay. Anyone home?
Sure. Place is blazing with light and noise. Sounded like a party.
Let's go see.
Follow me. How's Davy doing?
He didn't make it. Nor did little Jenny.
That's too bad. Davy was a real fighter. Both of them Calendar boys is, or was.
Yeah,
And Mac, Sean,
we don't know.
quite a business.
I'm glad you're all right, Micah.
Always.
Ask him if he's seen John.
Hey, have you seen John, Micah?
Didn't see much of anything once this storm came in.
He hasn't seen him.
He'll be fine. Things always turn out right for that boy.
I hope Mac and Sean are still out there somewhere, too. Move up, Arthur. I'll cover the rear.
Passing you.
Okay, go.
You sure about this, Micah?
Mr. Morgan, I never thought I would be so pleased to see your face. Been kind of lonely out here. Where's everyone else?
Old mining camp, back up the hill.
Huddled around a fire, waiting for Daddy to put food on the table. Said it before, we got too many mouths to feed.
Well, we got a few less now, so you should be happy.
That ain't fair, Arthur. I earn my share. You think it's unreasonable to expect others to do the same?
So, this house. You speak to the people there already?
No. Like Dutch told us. Look, but don't talk to no one. Just following orders. You know me. I'm a good boy.
Right. How much further?
Not far.
What does that mean?
Not far.
Thanks.
Oh, goddamn, this snow gets right to the bone.
Okay. Let's keep it down now, gentlemen. It's just up ahead.
Snuff and stash those lanterns, boys. Best you two lie low on this. Okay, let's head down there. Let's hitch up here.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode and another video on CD's Gaming. And today we're going to be talking about another legendary game in gaming history. And that game we're going to be talking about is Red Dead Redemption 2. Red Dead Redemption 2 revolves around the death of the American frontier and the death of the Wild Wild West. That's the vibes you get from the beginning of your story and your time playing this game. There's a saying from the game, when the time comes, you've got to run and you can't look back. And that's exactly what you feel from the moment you start this game, that you're running and you cannot even look back, you can't even waste time. There are very few stories in gaming that linger long after the credits roll. Stories that aren't simply remembered because of spectacular action sequences or breathtaking visuals, even though we're not saying, I'm not saying that Red Dead doesn't have that, it does. But because they feel deeply human, Red Dead does feel that way. Stories that ask uncomfortable questions about loyalty, redemption, mortality, and the inevitable passage of time. Red Dead Redemption 2 is one of those stories. On its surface, it's a western about outlaws, robbing banks, hunting bounties, escaping law, and surviving in the dying days of the American frontier and the Wild Wild West. But beneath that rugged exterior lies something far more profound. It is a story about watching a family slowly fall apart. It is about witnessing ideals decay to delusion. It is about a man discovering his humanity only after realizing he has very little time left to live. Most importantly, it is about the death of an era. Rockstar Games doesn't simply create another open-world adventure. They created a living, breathing America at the turn of the 20th century, a nation where industrialization is replacing wilderness, where railroads cut through untouched forests, where factories pollute once pristine rivers, and where civilization slowly suffocates the freedom that once defined the West. Every mountain, every forest, every abandoned cabin, every lonely trail that trails past of the story. The world itself mourns the passing of the frontier. And at the center of everything stands one man, Arthur Morgan, the main character of Red Dead Redemption 2. To understand Arthur Morgan, we first need to understand the man who raised him, Dutch van der Linde. Dutch wasn't always the charismatic manipulator players eventually come to know and hate towards the end. Years before the events of Red Dead Redemption 2, Dutch was considered almost mythical among outlaws. Unlike ordinary criminals motivated purely by greed, Dutch believed he was fighting against an unjust society, against the man, Uncle Sam. He despised government corruption, he hated wealthy industrialists, he rejected modern civilization. His dream wasn't simply to steal enough money to retire. He wanted freedom, true freedom, a place untouched by governments, banks, railroads, and mayors and corporations. A place where his family and his friends could live without answering to anyone, specifically the man. To many people, Dutch was inspirational. To Arthur, Dutch was everything. Dutch was like a father to Arthur. Arthur lost his parents while he was still young, 13 years old, I think he says in the story. His father was a violent criminal who eventually died in prison. His mother died when Arthur was little. He grew up with nothing, no home, no family, no future. And then Dutch found him. Instead of seeing another orphan, Dutch saw potential. Alongside another young outlaw named Hosea Matthews, Dutch raised Arthur almost like a son. He taught him to read, he taught him philosophy, he taught him survival. Most importantly, he gave Arthur a purpose in life, something he didn't have at such a young age. The Van der Linde gang wasn't simply a gang, it was a family. Every member had nowhere else to go. John Marston had been rescued after nearly starving as a child. Bill Williamson was a discharged soldier. Javier Escuela led revolution in Mexico. Charles Smith never truly belonged anywhere. Sadie Adler would eventually lose everything. Uncle wandered without direction. Everyone shared one thing. Dutch gave them a home, a purpose, and a life. Or at least he convinced them he gave them that. That's what makes Dutch such a great master manipulator. By 1899, America had changed. The age of gunslingers was coming to an end. Railroads connected in places where it never did, in forests on Indian land, which they stole from the Indians. Factories expanded, cities grew, banks became more powerful than ever. They became the staple of finances in America. Pinkerton detectives hunted criminals across state lines. Law enforcement became increasingly organized. Outlaws no longer disappeared into endless wilderness. There wasn't enough wilderness left anymore. Civilization had arrived. Dutch refused to accept reality. He believed one score could still buy freedom. One last robbery. Dutch refused to accept reality. He believed one final score could still buy freedom. One last robbery. One last escape. Just one more job. That's what Dutch always says throughout the game. One last job. We need money. That's what he says. We always need money. Those words become the central lie repeated throughout Red Dead Redemption 2. Every failure is followed by another promise, another plan. Every disaster is excused by another plan. Every death is justified by the idea that success is only one robbery away. Arthur believes him. Everyone believes him, at least for a while. When the game begins, players don't immediately see the event that changes everything. The infamous Blackwater Massacre. Instead, we only hear fragments, rumors, whispers, half-finished conversations. 22 people died. The robbery failed catastrophically. Several gang members were killed. The Pinkertons recovered most of the money. Dutch shot an innocent woman during the escape. Even members of the gang questioned, why would we even do that? Arthur, Hosea, kept questioning, why did y'all rob that ship? Why? Why did y'all do it? Dutch refuses to explain. Arthur, he stops asking at some point. Loyalty outweighs curiosity, reason, and sense. The gang flees into the mountains. Winter storms isolate them. Food becomes scarce. Morale collapses. Hope begins disappearing. This is where Red Dead Redemption 2 truly begins. Not with the triumph, but with failure. Snow blankets every mountain. Visibility barely scratches a few meters ahead. The gang isn't hiding, they're surviving. This is the opening scene of the game. This opening chapter is remarkably important because it immediately establishes Rockstar's priorities. Unlike most open-world games that begin with excitement and empowerment, Red Dead Redemption 2 begins with exhaustion. Everyone is cold, hungry, afraid. Dutch tries maintaining confidence. Hosea quietly questions their future. Arthur simply follows orders, as he always does. Despite the harsh conditions, players immediately begin seeing Arthur's personality. He isn't loud. He rarely speaks unnecessarily. He observes. He listens. He helps people. When John Marston disappears during the storm, Arthur volunteers to search for him. He finds John nearly frozen to death after wolves attack him. Arthur risks everything to save him. Not because someone orders him, but because Arthur simply does what Arthur does. That's simply who Arthur is. Even before his redemption begins, Arthur possesses compassion. He simply buries it beneath years of violence. One of the gang's earliest discoveries is a burned farmhouse. Inside hides a terrified woman, Sadie Adler. Her husband has just been murdered by the O'Driscoll's gang. Everything she owned has been destroyed. Her life, her husband, her family. She has absolutely nothing left. Arthur brings her back to the camp. At first, Sadie barely speaks. Grief consumes her. Players could easily mistake her for another background character. They would be incredibly wrong. Over the course of the game, Sadie transforms into one of Rockstar's greatest characters. She evolves from a grieving widow to a fearless gunslinger. Her story mirrors Arthur's loss, changes both of them. The difference is that Arthur learns mercy, Sadie learns vengeance and revenge. The gang's oldest enemies are led by Colm O'Driscoll. Years earlier, Dutch and Colm had once shared similar dreams. Eventually, greed and revenge consumed both sides. Dutch killed Colm's brother. Colm murdered Dutch's lover Annabelle. Neither man ever truly moved on from those decisions and those mistakes that they made. Their feud became endless. It became dangerous. It became life or death. Meaningless, honestly. That's what I think of it. Thousands would eventually suffer because two stubborn men refused forgiveness. Arthur recognizes this. He immediately even questions Dutch from the first chapter. What is the whole point of this feud with the O'Driscolls? Dutch doesn't see what Arthur's trying to show him. Eventually the gang escapes the mountains, spring becomes and it replaces winter. Hope slowly returns as they think they can finally make it out. The gang establishes a permanent camp at Horseshoe Overlook. For the first time, players experience Rockstar's extraordinary vision. Camp isn't simply a place to save progress. It feels alive. People wake naturally, cook breakfast, play cards, wash clothes, tell stories, argue, sing songs around campfires, drink together, mourn together, celebrate together. Conversations continue even when Arthur walks away. People remember previous events. Relationships evolve organically. No other open-world game had attempted this level of immersion on such a scale. The camp becomes home for the player, and that's exactly why its eventual collapse hurts so much, because it feels like home to you too as the actual player. Arthur is one of gaming's most fascinating protagonists because he isn't introduced as a hero. He's an outlaw. He's robbed innocent people. He's beaten debtors. He's killed countless men. He understands exactly what he is. Unlike Dutch, he doesn't fool himself and try and lie to himself that he's something better than what he truly is. No, he knows he's an outlaw. Arthur never pretends that he's anything else. Yet slowly players discover another side. Arthur sketches landscapes inside his journal. He writes thoughtful observations. He respects Native Americans. He admires beauty. Violence isn't his identity. It's simply the life he inherited, and for the first time he begins questioning whether that life was ever worth living. The Horseshoe chapter represents the happiest period in the entire game, because we obviously don't get to see what happened in the earlier chapters, in the earlier years of their lives. The gang laughs, children play, members tease one another, Karen drinks too much, Uncle avoids work, Pearson cooks stew, Jack Marston runs around pretending life is normal. For a brief moment, players almost believe Dutch's dream might actually survive and they can actually make it out. The missions themselves reinforce this illusion. Train robberies, stagecoach thefts, saloon fights, fishing trips, hunting excursions. These moments create something incredibly rare in storytelling. They make players fall in love with the gang before it even starts tearing itself apart from the inside. Because the tragedy only works if happiness comes first. You can't feel sorry for somebody if all you've had is just sadness. You need to see them through their joy and their happy times and to see and understand why they feel that way through the dark times. Rockstar understood this perfectly. If Dutch represents idealism, Hosea represents wisdom. Older, calmer, patient, Hosea constantly urges caution, constantly urges them to be safe and smart about what they do. He understands that the world has changed. He recognizes that endless robberies cannot continue forever. Unlike Dutch, Hosea doesn't dream about impossible futures. He focuses on keeping everyone alive. He's a realist. He's realistic. In many ways, Arthur trusts Hosea more than anyone. And Hosea is Arthur's real father, if you think about it. If you want to play the game, you realize that Hosea was the one who actually cared about Arthur and his health. He teaches empathy instead of pride, patience instead of anger, reflection instead of ego. When Hosea speaks, Arthur listens. Unfortunately, Dutch stops listening. And that decision ultimately leads and seals everyone's fate. Dutch could have just listened to Hosea. That's it. Ironically, the whole Blackwater situation, instead of admitting his mistakes, he becomes even more convinced that only he could save everyone. Dutch doesn't see every setback and claim and actually take responsibility for that. Every setback becomes someone else's fault. Every criticism becomes betrayal. Every failure demanded an even bigger gamble. Arthur doesn't see it yet. Neither do most of the gang. They're too busy trying to survive. But one man notices this change almost immediately. That man is Hosea Matthews, like we just spoke about Hosea. He's very wise, and we saw it. For decades, Dutch and Hosea had balanced one another perfectly. They were perfectly balanced. When Dutch was passionate, Hosea was patient. When Dutch dreamed, Hosea planned. Together they were nearly unstoppable. But at the end, that balance begins to disappear. If Coulter represented survival, Horseshoe represents hope. One of Red Dead Redemption 2's greatest achievements is how naturally Arthur's personality unfolds. Unlike many protagonists, Arthur doesn't introduce himself through long speeches. He reveals himself through small moments, helping strangers, returning lost horses, giving money to families with nothing, protecting people who can offer him nothing in return. His journal becomes especially important. Players discover a thoughtful man hidden beneath the hardened outlaw that he is. Arthur sketches landscapes with remarkable talent. He writes observations about wildlife. He questions morality. He wonders if Dutch's dream was ever real. The journal reveals something Arthur rarely says aloud. He's tired, not physically, spiritually, emotionally. He's spent his entire life believing violence was necessary. But at the end, he's beginning to wonder if it ever accomplished anything at all. And he knows it hasn't. Among the most uncomfortable missions in the game are Leopold Strauss's debt collections. Strauss represents himself as a respectable businessman. In reality, he's a loan shark. He lends money to desperate people, fully expecting they won't be able to repay it, just like loan sharks do. Arthur becomes the man sent to collect. These missions deliberately strip away the fantasy of being an outlaw. There are no heroic gunfights, no daring escapes, only frightened families, broken homes, sick farmers, desperate mothers, people trapped by poverty and have no escape, no other way. Arthur threatens them because that's his job, that's what he's paid to do, so he can afford to support the gang. But players can hear the discomfort in his voice throughout each of his missions. He doesn't enjoy it, he simply believes it's necessary. Our one collection changes everything. Thomas Downs. Thomas Downs isn't dangerous, he isn't wealthy, he's dying. When Arthur arrives demanding payment, Downs begs for more time. He coughs violently. Blood lands on Arthur's face. That one moment lasts only seconds, but changes everything. Players think almost nothing of it. Arthur certainly doesn't himself. But Rockstar has quietly introduced the event that will determine the rest of Arthur Morgan's life. Tuberculosis. At the time, there was no cure, only a slow, inevitable death. Arthur unknowingly carries that fate with him from this moment onward. It is one of gaming's greatest examples of foreshadowing. Death arrives quietly, without music, without a big entrance, without warning, without anyone realizing what has happened. Dutch refuses to remain idle. He believes they need money, always more money. We need more money. That's what he always says. One more score, one more robbery. This obsession becomes the gang's heartbeat. Every conversation turns to it. Tahiti, Australia, some tropical paradise where civilization cannot reach them. Dutch repeats these dreams so often that even players begin to hope they're possible. But they're fantasies, dreams, nothing more. The money required keeps increasing. The risks become greater. The gang loses more than it gains. Yet Dutch never changes course. Instead, he doubles down. He continues to want to get what he wants. Leaving Horseshoe Overlook, the gang relocates south into Des Moines. The region couldn't be more different. Swamps replace open plains, humidity replaces cool mountain air. The scars of the Civil War remain visible everywhere. Burned plantations, abandoned battlefields, families clinging desperately to lost glory. Here the gang discovers two wealthy dynasties, the Greys and the Braithwaites. Both families have hated one another for generations. Neither remembers exactly why, in most cases. The feud simply continues because it always has. Dutch sees opportunity. Instead of avoiding conflict, he decides to manipulate both families simultaneously. The plan seems brilliant at first. Work for each side, play them against one another, and steal from both and get the biggest bounty. Escape richer than before. Hosea warns against unnecessary complications. Dutch ignores him. Again. The sleepy town of Rhodes appears peaceful. Its strays
Its quiet streets hide constant tension. The sheriff answers to the Grey family. The Braithwaites control much of surrounding countryside. Even residents knows choosing sides is dangerous. Arthur spends weeks carrying out increasingly absurd jobs for both families, stealing horses, burning tobacco fields, delivering messages, protecting wagons. Each task deepens the gang's involvement. Slowly, the trap closes. Neither family is as foolish as Dutch believes. Both have been investigating the newcomers, but both know they're being manipulated. Dutch never notices. His confidence blinds him. Then tragedy strikes. Sean Maguire has become one of the camp's brightest personalities. Young, loud, fearless, always smiling. While walking through Rhodes, Sean jokes with Arthur. The moment feels relaxed, comfortable. Then, without warning, a rifle cracks. Sean's head explodes. He dies instantly. No dramatic speech, no final goodbye. 1 second he's alive, the next he's gone. Players are stunned. Arthur barely has time to react before a massive gunfight erupts. Rockstar intentionally refuses to romanticize death. Heroes don't always receive meaningful endings. Sometimes death is immediate, brutal, meaningless, and unavoidable. Sean's murder marks the moment the story permanently changes. From here onward, the gang never truly smiles again. The Braithwaite Manor burns against the evening sky, one of the most unforgettable sequences in gaming history. After discovering that Jack Marston has been kidnapped and sold to Angelo Bronte in St. Denis, Dutch leads the gang directly to Catherine Braithwaite's estate. The image is unforgettable. Dozens of gang members walking shoulder to shoulder towards the mansion in the dark with that light in the background. To this day, that's the greatest mission anyone has ever played, including myself. I don't think Rockstar can top that mission. No fear, no hesitation, only fury. When gunfire erupts, windows shatter, the mansion catches fire, smoke fills the air. Arthur fights beside John, Javier, Bill, Charles, Micah, and Dutch as everything burns around them. When Catherine Braithwaite finally emerges, she has nothing left. Her empire in ash, her family dead, her legacy destroyed. Dutch demands Jack's location. She laughs, not because she's won, but because everyone has already lost. It is one of the game's most chilling moments. Revenge has solved nothing. It never does. And this is something Dutch told them in the beginning of the game, that revenge is a luxury they cannot afford. St. Denis changes everything. Until now, Red Dead Redemption 2 has celebrated wilderness, forests, mountains, open skies. St. Denis is the opposite. Factories dominate the skyline. Streetcars rattle through crowded roads. Smoke pours endlessly into the air. Electric lights replace campfires. People hurry past without acknowledging one another. The city represents the future, a future Dutch despises. Here, the West finally dies. Arthur notices immediately. He doesn't belong here, neither does the gang. They're ghosts wandering around through a world that has already moved on from them. If Dutch represents old world charisma, Angelo Bronte represents modern power. He doesn't need revolvers, he doesn't need anything. He owns politicians, police officers, businessmen. He manipulates society from comfortable offices instead of a horseback. Dutch cannot comprehend this kind of authority and power. He still believes courage alone wins battles. Bronte knows money wins them now, because money is king. For a brief time, they cooperate and they work together, but neither trusts the other though. Arthur senses this disaster approaching, and he was right. Every decision made in St. Denis pushes the gang closer to oblivion. Micah Bell begins whispering into Dutch's ear more often. He encourages violence, he mocks compassion, he insists weakness is the gang's greatest threat. Meanwhile, Hosea urges caution. Arthur supports Hosea. John increasingly questions Dutch. Dutch faces a choice. Listen to decades of friendship, or believe the man constantly telling him exactly what he wants to hear. His decision changes history and leads to the events of Red Dead Redemption 1. Dutch slowly stops listening to those who love him and starts listening to those who feed his ego and make him feel better. The end and the final chapters of Red Dead Redemption 2 marks the emotional and narrative turning point. After months of running from the law, the Van der Linde gang believes one final robbery in St. Denis will provide enough money to escape. Their increasingly desperate situation. Instead, the heist ends in catastrophe. Law enforcement ambushes the gang, resulting in the deaths of key members and forcing the survivors to flee. The disaster shatters what little unity the gang still possesses and reveals that Dutch's once brilliant leadership is beginning to fail under pressure. The surviving members are swept away to the tropical island of Guam, where they become entangled in a local conflict while struggling simply to survive. Stripped of their resources and isolated from everything familiar, the gang is forced to confront the reality that Dutch's promises of freedom have become increasingly unrealistic. During these events, Dutch begins becoming and making colder and more ruthless decisions, while Arthur starts to question whether the man he has followed for most of his life is still the same leader who once inspired him and who he once loved. After returning to the mainland, Arthur's health deteriorates dramatically. He is diagnosed with tuberculosis, a disease that has no cure in 1899. Faced with the certainty of his own mortality, Arthur begins to reevaluate the life he has lived. Instead of blindly following Dutch, he focuses on helping others, protecting John Marston and his family, and making amends wherever he can. This diagnosis becomes the catalyst for Arthur's redemption, transforming him from a loyal outlaw into a man determined to leave behind a legacy of compassion rather than violence. Meanwhile, tensions within the gang reach a breaking point as Micah finally reaches and turns Dutch against the rest of the gang. Trust erodes as accusations and paranoia spread through the camp. Micah Bell grows increasingly influential, and Dutch becomes more increasingly dumb, if I may say. While longtime friends such as Arthur, John, Charles, and Sadie struggle to hold the gang together, they then start thinking maybe it's time to leave. The ideals that once united the Van der Linde gang, freedom, loyalty, and family, begin to crumble, setting the stage for the final chapter of the story and the heartbreaking conclusion of Arthur Morgan's journey and his death. And we finally see that in the conflict, in the gunfight between Arthur and the other crew who were with Arthur against Dutch, Micah, and Micah's friends and cronies. And it's a really sad ending. You know, seeing Arthur die and that sun setting as soon as he took his last breath, especially if he had the high honor ending, and you see him say, you know, I gave you all I had. That seems so real, so sad, because Arthur really gave Dutch everything he truly had, and Dutch didn't for once actually take that with a full heart. He took it so lightheartedly, and it's sad, but it is what it is. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did making it, especially recording and playing this game. This has been one of my favorite and most fun experiences ever. I really can't wait to see what Rockstar cook up with Red Dead Redemption 3. Honestly, I can't wait to see that. I have a feeling that's going to be a generational game, the same way GTA 6 is going to be generational. But if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe with the notification bell on, you know, so you know exactly when I'm dropping another video. If I were to give this game a rating, I would give it 10 out of 10. Beautiful. How? Wow. I'm never gonna forget this experience ever. But yeah. Like I said, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe with the notification bell on so you know exactly when I'm dropping another video. And if you did enjoy it, please make sure to leave a like as well. Share this with your friends so they don't miss out. And if you enjoy watching me create all these like gaming videos and, you know, basically breakdowns, then you can also watch me when I stream. So join the Twitch and join the TikTok streams and you'll have so much fun. But until then, till the next video and the next episode, I'll check you guys then. Peace.